Do you want to sit in the queen seat? Or do you want to sit beside me? We should make this not mushy as possible.
Aww.
No, this is not our published sex tape, bud.
I thought that's what this was. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come. Fucking rude, man.
Where do you want to sit?
Tricked me. Oh, wherever you want. I'll sit in the queen seat because this is my seat.
Okay. Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 27 of From the Van. It's a podcast from my van, where I have conversations with people who have relationships with residential vehicles. Today's episode features Colette Hamilton, who has a relationship with this residential vehicle. Guys, it's our Vaniversary episode. We've been living in the van together for a whole year. Me, Colette, and Spin, the dog, and it's going great. So we wanted to take this opportunity to have a conversation with each other. We talk about Colette's artistic pursuits in the theater world, her relationship with our relationship with the van, and what she might like to change, what we might upgrade in the next van, and various responses from our friends and family about moving into the van, that sort of stuff. We always have a good conversation, except when we're fighting. And we even did a little bit of that, just for your enjoyment. I hope that you enjoy episode 27 of From the Van, featuring my best bud, Colette Hamilton.
Take your head off.
Tell me what to do? You're a fucking podcast guest,
like a bum.
and I'm the show host. All right, how am I looking?
That's better.
Good?
You look
ear
very
hairs?
handsome. I need to do your ear hairs.
Oh, hopefully 4K is not enough. So welcome to your house.
It's nice.
How do you like it? How does this compare to the van that you live in?
It's pretty similar.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
it's real close.
Good.
Mine's just a bit cleaner.
Oh yeah? Who cleans it?
Me.
You do? Well, you better get on that.
I know,
shit,
I gotta get to work.
Oh boy. So let's figure out how to make this not just like this self-indulgent thing about the two of us just sitting here and talking to each other.
I just wanted to come talk about myself.
Oh, okay.
I never get to talk about myself. So.
Okay. So, welcome to the podcast, Colette. Hamilton, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Marty, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
Where are you from?
I'm from, I grew up in Fallbrook, California, which is just northeast San Diego County.
Okay.
But I was born in Seattle, which is why I'm a Seahawks fan, which I find is very important to mention.
To your identity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we find that you're a Seahawks fan first.
Yeah.
And then you grew up in the avocado capital of the world.
Yeah. That's important.
But you lived somewhere else for a little while, somewhere even hotter.
New York?
Marietta?
Oh, I went to high school in Marietta.
Okay.
Which is shit.
Yeah.
It's hot, and everybody is a conservative, Christian, Republican, which is just not really my scene. So, but I met a lot of good people.
I take umbrage with conservative and Republican being used to describe the same person, but we won't get into that.
I mean, conservative is like we're pure till marriage kind of thing.
I feel you. I get it. So, let's talk about what your creative drive is. What's your goal in life? Where are you headed? What do you want to be when you grow up?
So I've been doing,
apart from incredible at wearing jumpsuits.
Apart from Marty's girlfriend, I want to be working on being a theater director. I've been doing theater for it's been 17 years now. Mostly acting, but got into directing in the last few years, and it's become my love. So I'm starting a new show today.
Yeah.
Assistant directing the musical The Last 5 Years.
You're stoked about this musical.
I'm super stoked. It's my favorite musical. I haven't been working on musicals in directing, but if I had to work on a musical, it would definitely be this one.
Rad.
So that's super fun, and I get to work with a lot of great people.
Yeah.
I'm really stoked. It'll be fun.
Good. You've been really busy this year too, huh?
Yeah.
This is like sort of your first foray into professional directing gigs,
Yeah,
right?
I started with directing a staged reading that was like, I don't think you could call it a staged reading. It was very much a staged reading. It was not your typical staged reading where people stand around with scripts. There was a lot of moving. My actors loved it. And then I did assistant directed return engagements at Scripps Ranch. And then I took over for the director for like the last few weeks of production of 12th Night at high school, which was interesting. And the teacher had her baby right when I came in. And so I had to like catch up on everything because I didn't know what was going on really or know any of these kids and run the rest of the show.
Yeah,
so
trial by fire.
Yeah, it was fun. It went well. I'm proud of them. And then I did... I directed a 10-minute play for Scripps Ranch Out on a Limb New Play Festival. Did a 10-minute play about school shootings that I thought was really powerful and really important. And yeah, then we were just on a 2-month vacation, and now I'm doing this.
So, before we get into the van thing, which is probably what everybody really wants to hear about, I'm going to just go ahead and lead with this and not pretend like I don't know it about you. One of the really cool things of the nexus between the two of us is not even that we're theater people so much as, when we found out that we were theater people, you were in the middle of directing your honors thesis at UCSD, and you were directing a show that was written by a woman I worked with in undergrad during my theater degree. Her name's Marie Irene Fornez. And tell us about Fefu and Her Friends, the play that you were directing.
Fefu and Her Friends is a surrealist, feminist, very abstract play about women's relationships to one another and to men, and how their self-image and worth and and relationships between their community of women is affected by male violence, whether that be physical or vocal or all that good stuff. And it's a beautiful play. There's 8 women and no men in it, because you don't need men to tell a story about men and women. And it's immersive. So you spend the first part of the play in the main theater room, and then the second part you break the audience into 4 groups, and they rotate between 4 different rooms, and the actors do their scenes 4 times in a row. And something special that I added to the play that was not in the script is that they would do it 4 times, and it would be like they restarted. They wouldn't come out of the scene at all. They would just, the blocking would end with them in their starting blocking, if that makes sense. And then they would start the scene again when the next group came in. And so they weren't allowed to break, because some of these scenes were very deep and very emotional, and you didn't want them to release, because every time it built, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah. And then on the 4th run of it, they all had a different ending, like an actual ending. And so each group of audience got to experience something different with each group. And then you come back for the 3rd part, come back into the main space again, and see the rest of the play. And so it's meant to kind of symbolize the integration of people, and then the like segregation, and I'm forgetting the word that I used like a gazillion times in my thesis. I'll remember it at some point. Just like the breaking apart and separation of the community, and then the reintegration and how they come back together and what that looks like. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I could go on, but it's a really it's a really wonderful play, really important play.
So that that specific show and the way that you chose to do it was like logistically tremendously intricate and difficult, and I was super impressed with the execution.
Thank you. I did a totally modernized production of it too, because I think it can exist anywhere in time and space. Right. And the world of the play itself exists on its own plane. It's not part of our world. It's a separate world. So the way that they interact with each other is maybe a little bit off, and the way that they walk and the way that they interact with this space is not totally how we would. And that's the surrealist aspect of it, is you're watching something and you're like, this is normal, but there's something about it that's not. There's something off about this world.
Well, so we should say that Irene Fornez sadly
passed away about a year ago.
Yeah. What I was going to say is, sadly, heretofore in our history, in human history, sexism is an evergreen topic, right? Unfortunately. That said, in the world of 20th century modern feminism, Irene Fornés was way ahead of her time.
Yeah.
And as such, when was the play written?
The play was written in the 70s, but takes place in the 30s.
Right.
But
it's still completely
very
relevant.
You wouldn't know that unless I told you. There are some references that you wouldn't get, but overall, the themes of it are very relevant.
Okay. And then, just before we get off of theater, because one of the things that inspires me about you is that you're not going to take the easy route, right? Like, it's easy to make some pratfalls funny for an older audience and that sort of thing, but the show that you chose to direct this summer was about climate change and gun violence, and it was confrontational and very difficult to stomach for some people, and it was also really fast and kind of difficult to decipher as well. What do you, like, in the perfect world, obviously you want to make a living, but like, if you achieve what you want, what's your drive? What's your motivation behind sort of the subtext after achieving the theater thing, right?
Like, what do I want to do with it? Yeah. So one of the things that I really love about theater is that it doesn't have any boundaries, and you can do anything and say anything with it. And there's something special with the relationship between the actors and the playwright and the director and everybody working behind the scenes and the audience, because you're in the room with it. As an audience, you're sitting there and you're experiencing it and you're feeling it. It's not like a film where there's a screen in between you. You're actually in this room with bodies and movement. And so it's a safe place, but also the best place to challenge people. Partially because it's a safe place, but you get to be part of the catharsis of it. So I find it really important to do theater that is thoughtful and that is trying to say something and make people think and feel, and not always serious all the time, because comedy can accomplish that like really well, but it's not easy. It's smart comedy. It's and so I want to do work that makes people leave like having to think about what they just saw and discuss it with the people around them. Like you've seen a bunch of my shows and they don't make sense all the time. The ones that I pick, the stories like don't actually really make sense, but what they're saying is something really important and it's in your face. So if you leave and you have a discussion about what you saw, that would be success for me. So when I did that 10-minute play about the school shootings and climate change, the audience was a challenge, and all my actors were a bit like, okay, well, what are we gonna do? Like, how are we actually gonna change these people's minds? And I'm like, well, we can't necessarily do that, but if they're walking away and they're having a conversation, or they come and they ask me a question, or they're just curious and thoughtful about what they saw, then we did it. We did something. So
cool.
And of course I want to do theater by women, about women, for women, dominated by women, because in the theater world we are in a very male dominated industry, especially in directing. It's a lot of men. I just was looking at the Emmy winners and nominations yesterday, and there was like a couple of female directors in like the mini-series one, but none for any of the main series that were nominated. And when I went to theater school in New York, and same in San Diego, it was like you have a demographic where it's like 85% women and 15% men, and they're doing plays that are 90% men and 10% women. And that just doesn't work. It's not where we're at.
Sure. Wow. I mean, who knew that theater was male dominated in a world of such equality?
I know. Such a surprise. But there's so many great women that are a part of theater and making theater, and they need to be acknowledged and their work needs to be done.
Yeah. Wonderful. So you just finished, you just completed 1 year living in a van with a monster of a human being.
Yeah, that's what I'd call you.
How's that?
It's great. It's really great. It doesn't feel like a year. I was thinking about that earlier.
Okay.
It doesn't feel like a year at all. Which is probably because it was easier and more fun than probably we thought it was going to be.
Certainly for me, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I expected to hate it. I just wanted the camper and to try the experiment, and I'm still experimenting. Mm-hmm. Well, let's go through your process with the thing. Like what we'd been dating for 4 or 5 months when. I think
that's maybe 6. Yeah.
When I bought the van, and you drove me out to Fontana. Describe that.
Yeah.
I don't want to tell the story. You do it.
You had been obsessed talking about the van just all the time. I would come over after work and you're like, let's watch van videos. And I'm like, oh, I just don't want to do that right now. And you would just talk about it constantly. We'd be having a silent moment and you'd be like, so in the van, I think it'd be cool if I did this. And I'm like, okay. And then one day you were like, can I ask you a favor? I'm like, what? I'm like, I think I found the van, but it's in Fontana, so you take me to Fontana. And fucking, if you know where Fontana is, I'm sorry. It's gross. It's hot. It was the beginning of July, so it's hot as shit out there. And it's about 2 hours from Encinitas. And not a very pleasant place. So that was
July
fun.
the 4th specifically.
July the 4th is, and so I was like, yeah, I guess I could do that. And you woke me up at like 5 in the morning, because I had to work in the evening. And we went out there and we found your van, and it was cool to see how excited you were and nervous. You were so nervous about like if you wanted to pull the trigger or not, but you wanted it so bad, and glad to have taken you there.
So I'm obsessing. I get the van. I start like just doing nothing but working on the van all day, every day. What's going through your head?
Pay attention to me.
Sorry, bud.
I was like, hello. No, but it was a lot, and I was like trying to figure out how to be helpful, but it was your project, not my project, and so I just let you talk through things with me, and yeah, it was an overwhelming experience. Yeah. It was just kind of funny.
2 months of overwhelming. 2.5 months.
Yeah, which isn't that long. So, and that's what I was like. There's an end point. We're gonna finish the van, and then the van will be fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was fun to watch you put it all together and work on stuff and cry a lot. And I was glad to help you when I could help you. If I were to go back, I wish I would have helped you more. Yeah. But I just didn't know that we would be here.
Okay. What about the process of like, for you, how was transitioning into the van? I mean, we should say that you, for the first 4 or 5 months that we were living in the van, you still had a really nice, like, apartment that was like an accessory dwelling unit to your dad's place in Fallbrook.
Yeah. I loved that apartment. It wasn't such a big change. Like, I thought it would be a bigger change, but since we had been spending so much time together already, I had been living out of a bag from the back of my car for so long, that it like wasn't that different. And I still like went home and had my time in my apartment and stuff for a while, which was good for me, because I love my space. But it wasn't as difficult as I thought. Honestly, the hardest part, and I'll still say it's the hardest part, is not having my own shower. Yeah. Like, that's the hardest part, because I like to take showers. Right. But otherwise, it was like, okay, I'm living out of a bag still, but in a different space. Right. So it wasn't. I've heard you say that about the shower before. Is it that you want to take more showers, or you just want your own space to shower in? I want both. Okay. And take more showers when I have my own space, and I want to be able to do it whenever I want. Right. I want to be able to wake up and fall into my shower. instead of getting to the gym.
Right.
And having to deal with that.
Yeah.
And having all my shit in my shower and all my bathroom stuff, you know.
Okay. What else is frustrating and difficult and that about being in the van?
Storage.
Mm-hmm.
You give me a lot of shit. I have a lot of clothes. Because I'm a very fashionable person.
Yeah.
And I don't have much room to put them. So, you know, that's kind of annoying. But, otherwise, and something that we both agree on is, like, that the bed and the couch are the same space. And so we have to always get up at the same time or go to bed at the same time.
Or be crawled over while we're trying to sleep and the other person's not.
Yeah, because once you get up, I don't really go back to sleep often.
Right. Unless I'm away from the van.
Unless you leave, yeah. So, but that's something that we're learning. I think that's a good thing that we're learning, so that in the next space, we'll be able to create that for a...
Yeah. I always have to talk a little bit about parking policy. But
really?
I mean, well, when we're talking about clothing storage, what occurs to me is that, like many other people who live in Encinitas, we have an extra car.
Yeah.
And you keep when we're here, we just finished this trip and you had a bunch of clothes up under the bed, but normally my surfboard's under there.
Yeah.
And so your car is your closet. Mm-hmm. And the funny thing is that the vehicle that we're sleeping in is technically illegally parked on the street, but the one that's just there to be storage for your clothes is perfully legal.
I know.
Which is a weird public policy decision, right?
The good thing is I will be using it now for the next 5 weeks a lot. So
the next 5 weeks for the last 5 years.
Yeah. I would love to get rid of my car. But I love my car. It's like, it's 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it's got over 250,000 miles on it, and it's all paid for. And it's a little Prius, so it gets good gas mileage. And so I plan to have it until it doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't really want to have a car unless it's a space we can live in.
Yeah.
I'd like to it takes up space, and I have to be like, oh, I have to go move my car like every 3 days when I'm not using it ever, which is weird. I don't love that we're taking up that space, but it's like now I'm going to use it a bunch, so it comes in handy.
Right.
It's gotten me a lot of places.
Let me restart this before it stops.
It's also refreshing to be in this period of my life where I am not driving as much. Because aside from when I lived in New York and London, I've always been driving a lot.
Yeah.
Probably 15 to 20 hours a week.
Because you lived in a distant suburb from where you went to college.
High school, too.
Oh, and then the princess parties.
I was going, in high school, I had about a 40-minute commute from Fallbrook to Marietta when I was half the time. When I was at my dad's, and I'd been doing princess parties since I was 16, which was a lot of driving.
Yeah.
It was all over Riverside and San Diego County, and then when I went to college, I did that too, and I was commuting from Fallbrook to La Jolla, which is about an hour one way. So I've always been doing a lot of driving, so it's very refreshing to not. I wish I could use the train for all my stuff for my shows, but it just isn't realistic.
Because it doesn't run regularly enough.
It doesn't run regularly enough. If a lot of my rehearsals are night rehearsals, and I can't get back.
The return train.
At 11 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
And financially, I was doing the math the other day, and I was thinking okay, if I were to take the train and Uber for the run of this show, would it be more or less than what I pay for car insurance and gas? Mm-hmm. Way more.
Way more.
Way more.
Because we subsidize the parking. Mm-hmm. And then when you talk to people about buses and trains, they're like, well, the train's never paid for itself. Well, the street's never paid for itself, right? We have a completely different rubric for the way that we approach the subsidy of those two modes of transportation. And it results in a situation where you have to either find some other method of subsidy, or you just have to do it either because you have the luxury of not having to drive, or because you have this like adamant like ecological or ethical or transportation like malfunction or whatever.
Yeah, or you have the financial privilege. Because if I had enough money to do that right now, I would. But unfortunately, you don't get paid very well assistant directing.
Right.
It's like interning.
Yeah.
So you know,
let's just for the benefit of anybody listening, princess parties are hilarious novelty to me. So explain what that is, because
I would go to kids' birthday parties dressed as Disney princesses. I worked for a company and they had all the costumes, and I'd go and I'd do face painting and I'd sing songs and play games and tell stories and take a lot of pictures. I was mostly Ariel, Rapunzel, and Elsa.
Okay. Oh, I never asked you this. This is not Disney syndicated.
Okay.
Question. This is not Disney syndicated.
Oh.
These are
you can't do that.
These are costume approximations of these Disney princesses.
So
did you ever get rolled up on like by men in black suits who were like
No, so the thing is that all of the princesses are not technically owned by Disney. There's probably a better way to say that. But because they were other stories, they came from other stories before they were turned into Disney movies.
Yeah.
By like Hans Christian Andersen wrote
the
like
canon
most
of old fairy tales and shit.
What they do own is the name.
Okay.
So you have to like, you can like call them something different, and we didn't really do this too much, but you know, you call it like a mermaid princess instead, but it was Ariel. And the ones that are owned and trademarked is Mickey and Minnie. So we had the mascots, which I never had to do for like most of the time. I started doing it, but it's really hot in those mascot costumes.
It sounds terrible.
And I was like,
especially if some other idiot's been
pretty
breathing
princess.
in there.
Let me just be a pretty princess. So those ones you had to like, those ones you could get in trouble for, but not any of the princesses.
My family lives on the other side of the country, and yours is here. And we were actually living in the van before I met your dad.
That's true, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How did your sphere of people, because we have a bunch of the same friends now because we've both been living in Encinitas, and you sort of have met all of my friends. You've stolen all of my friends, especially Jen. Like, she used to be one of my close homies, and now, like, I'm her friend Colette's boyfriend. But, like, in terms of your sphere of people that you didn't know before me or meet through me or whatever, what was the reaction to the van thing?
Well, my mom thought it was really cool.
Even from the very beginning?
Yeah, I told my mom, because she didn't really get, like, why when I had to move out of my apartment, I took over a room at my mom's house to keep my stuff. Yeah. Really. And so if we ever needed to be apart, I had somewhere to stay.
Right. Which has happened a couple of times.
Yeah. And she didn't really get why. And so I was like, okay, I should probably tell her now what's going on.
Oh! She didn't know until then that we were living in the van.
No, I didn't tell her until, like,
December?
Until January. Until, like, right after I moved in.
Okay.
Well, I didn't really consider myself living in the van.
Okay.
Yet, especially since I still had my apartment.
The apartment, yeah.
And I was still feeling it out, you know?
Interesting. There was never a cognitive shift for me either.
Yeah, it just kind of happened.
Yeah, yeah.
It just kind of happened one day. I just didn't really think of it, like, consider myself living in the van for a while. For a while,
I lived in the van, and then we lived in the van, but I'm not sure when.
I have no idea when it
switched over. Yeah.
But so I was like, okay, I'd tell my mom. My mom thought it was really cool because that's my mom. She's super into stuff like that. And
she had known me for a while at this point.
She loves you.
Yeah, yeah.
She loves you the most. And you had met all my California family. You came to Thanksgiving, and you met her long before that, though, right?
Yeah,
long before that. So she was super into it. She loves you more than she likes me. She's tried to help a bunch with the podcast. She's awesome. Yeah. My dad I already had to take him warming up to meet you.
Yeah.
And to start liking you.
Uh-huh.
Partially because of our age difference, and I didn't tell him about you for a while, so he's kind of pissed at me about that.
He resented that fact, too.
Yeah, because I'm really close with my dad. He met you, and he had to be all, like, dad-like. And it was funny, right before you guys met, he had bought... I told him about the van. He knew that you had the van.
And that I was building it out into a camper.
Yeah, because we'd gone to that trip in
Yosemite and
Mammoth. And he knew it was a camper, and that you'd been working on that for a while. And he was like, what, has he got a peace sign on his forehead? And then, like, a couple weeks later, he bought the biggest Sprinter van that exists. And he's using it as a work truck right now because he's in construction. But then he's like, I think then I'll build it out. And I'm like, what, are you going to get a peace sign on your forehead? And he was like, yeah, I think we will. He's funny, dude. So you guys finally met on Halloween. Right before Halloween.
Right.
And so that took some getting used to for them. Well, for him, Robin is very sweet and lovely to everybody. And then when did we finally tell him? I think we told them in February. We waited a while. It was like right before we went to Vegas, wasn't it?
I don't know.
I don't remember. I remember we were having dinner with them.
Okay.
I don't remember, but I think they had kind of figured it out.
Oh, right. I remember. It was when we were headed to Vegas.
They had kind of figured it out, but, like, I think my dad was a little bit in denial. He was like, no, that's not right. And Robin was like, yeah. Robin's real smart. And he was like, no.
He just didn't want to believe it.
They looked like a little shocked. But they were surprisingly did really well with it. I was really actually very surprised. And now they're super chill about it. Yeah. And they love you. And everything's really good now with my parents, which is great. Like, I mean, how did your parents? Your turn. I already know, but they don't.
I mean, I grew up in the South, you know? And my parents, relative to where they grew up and where I grew up, they are left-wing extremists, right? But if you put them down in the middle of San Diego County, which isn't even that liberal relative to liberal parts of or left-wing parts of the country, they'd be pretty middle of the road. Yeah. You know, especially my dad, who's a lot more traditional in terms of his perceptions of cultural propriety and that sort of thing, you know?
Sure.
He's not a bigot by any definition, but there are certain, you know, societal strictures that he still abides by.
Yeah.
And I sort of like, the crazy thing is and I think he still doesn't know this, but, you know, we were talking about rental prices because this is crazy. South Carolina, they have a house that they bought in 99. It is 5 bedrooms, 4.5 baths, on a 1/4 acre on a lake. You've been there.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I like that.
It's in a culturally unappetizing place to me. But it's a gorgeous place, beautiful geography, real nice house, way too big for me, but, you know, they love it. And the crazy thing is, their mortgage is like 20 years old, and so, you know, adjust for 20 years ago prices. But their mortgage on a 4.5 bath, 5 bedroom house on a 1/4 acre in South Carolina is only a little bit more than I was paying last year for a 450 square foot 1 bedroom in coastal Encinitas. And not even super close to the coast, on the other side of the freeway, so 3/4 of a mile or a mile from the beach. Woe is me. But anyway, we were talking about rental prices, and we happened to be walking through the Swami's parking lot.
Yeah.
And I pointed a Sprinter out to him, and we were just having a conversation. Pointed a Sprinter out to him, and I was like, you know, some people are fitting these out as places and they're living in them. Yeah. And this is probably a $95,000, $100,000 built out Sprinter.
Yeah.
And I told him what that would cost, and he's like, "Oh, that would cost less than your apartment." And the crazy thing is, that was the first catalyst that really got the wheels turning.
Yeah.
And so my dad, who was the most resistant to it, was also the first one who was responsible for getting me really moving on it. And then I was on a camping trip with Matt and Jamie and that at Westphalia, and we started talking about the reasonability of building out an old VW, which doesn't make any freaking sense because they're old and they're collector's items, so they're too expensive, so you should build it out into a small van like we did. And I started kicking it around to my dad, and when I pitched to him the idea of, I think I might get a van, he was like, cool. Because I think my dad sort of perceives debt as stability. And if I buy a car, then I'm no longer like an anti-car weirdo, sort of. Although he was completely supportive of me being, a cycling advocate, and still is, and all of that. But then I was like, and then build a residence into it and maybe shake off my rent. And he's like, you mean like live in a car? And then even when after... I remember he worked at a bank, and the bank's annual financial statement went out in October.
Yeah.
And I hadn't told they knew that the van was done.
Yeah.
And they knew that, and it was the same as sort of, I think, your dad and Robin. Like, they knew this was coming, but they were sort of burying their heads in the sand about it and like trying to deny it, and sort of like, he just got a place and a good job and all of that. And, and the financial statement went to my old apartment and bounced back to the bank. And he was like, so do I have the right address for you? And I could kind of hear it in his voice, that he knew what was going down. Yeah. And I was like, so I'm registered to vote, and I get my mail at Katie's place and my sister's place. And he's like, oh, so you're living in the car. And I was like, well, it's a van. And it's got running water and a bed and a couch and a whole bunch of power, but yes. And it's been interesting, it's been a whole, because they knew pretty much right away, a month after we moved in or whatever. But it's been a really interesting growth process with my folks and everybody else around me, because it seems like a crazy thing. And then you have the parking conversation and the propriety of occupying a parking space for living, which is a whole can of worms that I think desperately needs to be opened, if for no other reason than to end the wholesale subsidy of parking all over the United States. But as my parents sort of like, by osmosis and me talking about our experiences, as they experience the myriad advantages of living in a van, whether it be commuting the night before to go to a meeting that's in another county, or being able to only spend a few $1,000s and take a 7.5 week vacation because you're only paying for gas and not accommodations. It's like a mind-blowing thing to folks who were, spending a lot of money to treat their kids to short-term vacations where you went out of state and you're just hemorrhaging money, and this is a different way to do the whole thing. And I think that to a certain degree my dad specifically wants me to be a productive member of the community, and this didn't fulfill his fear of me checking out. I'm still civically engaged, almost more so, and so I feel like there was a whole bunch of hesitation and reticence and all of that, and I'm still super curious as to how the conversation goes with the people in their community with whom they're keeping up appearances.
Sure.
Do your dad's homies know that you live in a van with your boyfriend who's substantially older than you?
Probably not.
Or does he just tell him, oh, Colette's dating an attorney? Because there are a bunch of ways you can tell this story, and it can either look good on paper.
That you're an attorney.
Yeah, he still doesn't believe it.
I don't think he believes you, so.
Okay.
You know my dad likes you when he makes fun of you. So
which is
he really,
constant.
Yeah, so he really likes you now.
Yeah, he
so
must be
that's great.
in love with me.
Yeah, it's funny. I think my mom probably tells people.
Yeah.
I know she kept telling everybody that we were on this big trip.
Yeah.
I don't know. The family's one thing, and you kind of like it feels like higher stakes. The interesting part has been like friends and the way friends react to it. Because a lot of my friends, like, they're like cool, but they like don't get it. And so they're like cool, but also like
they're on the phone with each other, like, is
weird.
Colette okay?
Yeah.
Should we make sure she's all right?
And only a couple of them have actually been in here
Yeah.
and like seen it, and then they're like, oh, okay. No one's been rude about it, but you can tell when some of them are like, you okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's the crack here? And I'm like, it's really fun, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think they all see how happy I am, and then, you know, what are they going to do?
I had somebody at the bar a few months ago say, because I'm super transparent about it, I want to have all the hard conversations with everybody.
Yeah, I don't really tell a lot of people.
Yeah.
Like, most people at work didn't know.
And I just told a perfect stranger, I was like, yeah, I live in a van. And somebody who was like friends with them but also knew me was trying to mediate the conversation and be like, you don't live in a van, you're a van dweller. And I'm like, that's not going to make it more okay.
Not the same. That's like
what's going to
definitely
make
the same thing.
Yeah, what's going to make it more okay is having the conversation about what my quality of life in the van is.
Yeah.
You know? And so I want to have those conversations, and I feel like, yeah.
I feel like it just doesn't come up much for me.
Uh-huh.
You know, unless someone's like, oh, where do you live? Then otherwise it just doesn't really come up.
Yeah.
But I like, you know, I like talking to people about it, because you start with, I live in a van, to explain all the things that are in the van and what it looks like. And they're like, oh, a lot of people just don't really know, or they've seen it on Instagram or like Pinterest, and they're like, oh, how cute. Like, you see, I've been seeing a lot that there's like a Facebook post that's being shared all over the place of like a big school bus that's all built out and like painted white on the outside, so it's like super Pinteresty, kitschy looking and shit.
Yeah.
And that's everybody's sharing that. I've seen a bunch of random people on my Facebook, and it's just really funny, because you're like, oh, people are doing a variation of that. People around you are. You just might not. You think it's like some kind of fantasy, like, not really a thing.
Right. The Ewoks
But there's actually
treehouse that you see on.
Yeah, there's like actually community of people doing it.
Yeah.
And I think the next one, I'll probably have it like more on my social media for people to see. And
when you have a van you can actually be proud of.
No! Shut your mouth. I just wasn't Instagramming your van bill when you did it. I was in bed. Like, okay.
Back when you could be in bed and I could do things at the same time. Now you have to help me because you have nowhere to go.
Just hang out upstairs and open the door and like look down once in a while and be like, you doing okay?
And I'm slumped over the van crying because I fucked something up.
Cool, I'll be in here. No, if you started crying, I always came down to make sure you were okay. Yeah. Otherwise, I'd be like, you just broke a finger, it'll be fine. You didn't break any fingers, but...
No. Okay, cool. Well, back to the van. Let's go first with this van. So many little bits and pieces in the process, even though I'm the one who was primarily obsessing over it and studying and stuff. Every once in a while I got to a stumbling point and you helped me like figure some shit out, which was super awesome. You upholstered the couch and made Spin's little tiny custom dog bed. But here's the question. In this specific van, not moving on to a larger van yet, in this specific van, if we were going to redo it or do it over again or whatever, what would you change? Still within the constraints of this space.
I mean, the layout is like pretty much as perfect as you could have done it. I think probably the door boxes might be smaller just to keep the weight off of the hinges. We've talked about moving the solar stuff like under the bed or somewhere like that's less prime real estate now that you know what's going on with it. And I would like put more like drawers in instead of those open cabinets. We bought those baskets to be drawers, which are great, but everything kind of spills out. So actually having like drawers would be chill. I don't know how I would change the under the bed storage, but probably something with the under the bed storage. More just like organizational things, because the layout is gorgeous. You did a great job with the space. So, and we've had a lot of innovations since we first moved in. The queen seat has been great. The window shades have been great, because that opened up the space a lot. Even the backpack hooks that we have on the solar cabinet is
such a simple thing.
Because our backpacks are just all over the floor all the time. And you would get annoyed with my backpack, and I would get annoyed with both of our backpacks. And I'm like, let's put a hook up. Like, so that's great. The new bench seat is great. Bench shelf.
Yeah, the bench shelf.
Mostly use it for a shelf.
Yeah. It's crazy. But crazy how useful some of these like little tiny things are.
Yeah, even when you put the what is it
D-ring?
The D-ring back, the hook spin to the bed. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. The riv nuts have really made a whole bunch of stuff possible in terms of like feeling things out.
Drying rack for our towels.
Yeah.
We've changed a lot of just little things that really, really help.
Okay, so we just did like 11,000 miles and 7.5 weeks of traveling. We went from basically the rough route was Encinitas to Vancouver, through Banff, the Cascades and the Rockies, and then down to Chicago, and then back up to Toronto and Montreal to New York, and then back here through Denver and Columbus and Zion. Do you have like an idea, like a view of how do you want to continue living in a van?
Yeah.
And if so, what ideas has this sparked for you in terms of, you know, whether it's using it to facilitate your career or additional travel? Like what are you sort of fantasizing about? What are you thinking about in terms of what van life means moving forward?
Yeah, so I love the van. I really do. I've fallen more and more in love with it all the time. It's facilitated us doing so many more trips, like even little ones, even to just areas around San Diego that we wouldn't have done before. And with theater, it's great because if I'm doing a show that's in downtown San Diego or Miramar or wherever, and we get to go and stay down in that area, that's rad. Ideally, I'd love to be able to do shows all over the country or other countries and take the van there and spend a month or two in that area, working and enjoying the place. This trip was kind of the first time like I really felt like we were doing van life like everybody looks like on the internet.
Because we've been stationary mostly.
We've been stationary. And we've still done a lot for being stationary.
Right.
But I think this trip like emphasized how much I want to continue this, but how I'd like to upgrade as far as vans.
Yeah.
Because we both didn't know that we would both be in here, and you didn't know if you were going to like this space when you got it, and living in it. And so I'm in love with the Ford Transits. The 148 wheelbase, high roof. So I'd love to, a big dream of mine is to get another van and to create this space together.
Yeah.
Really like get into the design and make it colorful and like fun and ours. And that's something that really excites me. And I'd love for us to find remote jobs and be able to go where each of us have projects and in between do whatever the fuck we want.
Yeah. So what I know that you want more clothes storage. We've already talked about that. But like
very important.
But like in the new van, you say 148-inch wheelbase Ford Transit, the high roof, which has 6 feet and 8 inches of
6 foot 8, yeah,
of clearance in the top. What would you like to see happen in that van? That's a modification or an upgrade or just brand new and additional from what we're in right now.
Yeah. So I'd like to have a bed that at the back of the van that's always a bed that's high enough where we have the garage space underneath. In a perfect world, I'd love for us to have bikes. I've just learned how to ride a bike last year because you taught me, which is super exciting. But you've been a bike man for fucking ever, and it makes me sad that you're not riding a bike all the time anymore. And if we get to a point one day where I don't have my car, having the van and bikes would be a really great tool for us, and just good exercise and good for getting outside. And so that would be really awesome. And then having the stationary bed and then a permanent couch set up, maybe with one of those tables. What are they called?
The lagoon tables?
Those lagoon tables, those are cool. Maybe one of those. But having a stationary couch set up, love seat or whatever, that one of us can get up and work on, or stay up late and work on and not disturb the other person. And then having a kitchen space that's inside, because I think one thing that was that can become challenging when traveling is like you don't always have a space to like get out, like spread out the van and cook outside like we do a lot of the time. So that would open up a lot for us in terms of weather and just where we are in the world, especially cities. You know, I was cooking in here all week in Chicago when you were taking your class.
With all the doors closed.
With all the doors closed. And one, it's like kind of funny to like cook sitting down. And also like it got really hot in here and like really like smoky some of the times with the skillet when I was making tacos and shit. So that would be cool. And we'd probably get a Nature's Head toilet this time.
Yeah.
Bigger sink. I fantasize about a bigger sink a lot. I don't know why, but well, for dishes and like washing my face.
Yeah.
Because I like very conservatively try and wash my face in the sink. But it's just like it gets everywhere.
Yeah.
So that'd be cool. I fantasize about all the storage things I would like to do.
Yeah.
Like all the different
like what?
ways to have like hooks and like cabinets and like netting and all kinds of like creative storage stuff.
Yeah. What colors do you want?
Ooh, I want. Well, we both love lavender.
I love
we
lavender.
both love sage. We both love like a pale blue. So I'd love to incorporate one or two of those colors. I just love colors. Like I don't know why vans are always so like they're either all white or all black or like all one color. I'm like, that's boring. There's so many colors out there. Let's add some fucking color to this place. And then I collect coasters, and it would be really fun to do a countertop out of the coaster, some of my coaster collection, and do like a shellac over the top. That would be super fun to do. I'd love to like make more curtains and pillowcases or whatever, and like stuff for the van like that. Yeah, a freezer would be cool.
Yeah.
I love smoothies and ice cream. I miss smoothies. We used to drink smoothies all the time.
Pretty much every day, yeah.
So that's something we don't really get. We bought we were in the store in, where was that? In Glenwood Springs the other day. And they had a 3-pack of ice cream sandwiches. And I was like, damn it, we don't have a freezer. We can't eat 3 of them. And you were like, yeah, we can.
Binge it.
We like binge ate 3 ice cream sandwiches, which was great and delicious.
Oh, the limitations of van life.
I know. It's so hard. We just have to eat 3 ice cream sandwiches. So having even a small freezer, just to like be able to make smoothies.
I've never asked you this.
Mm-hmm.
Have there been any times when you're just like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. I can't handle this anymore. Because, you know, I mean, you and I get along super well, but we get in each other's shit sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, but, like, not that extreme.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just kind of like, okay, I need to go take a walk.
Yeah.
Or, I need to go, like, have a long shower.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing where I'm like, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
I've never felt like that.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'm just like, I'm gonna go for a walk.
Yeah.
Which I used to do in my apartments anyway. I'd be like, I gotta get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And like get outside for a minute
Mm-hmm.
and walk around, like not just stand around. I gotta go walk around somewhere.
Yeah.
Have you?
No. I mean, there are times when I've been irritated with you for whatever, like, you know.
Stupid things that we get irritated about.
Whatever, like, little trite reason, like, you dribbled something somewhere, or I just want to be left alone and you keep talking, but like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so funny because people are sort of constantly surprised that we can do this. Yeah. But the thing I keep going back to is like, if I could tolerate you in a 5-bedroom house, I think I can tolerate you in here. And if I can't tolerate you in here, I probably couldn't tolerate you in a 5-bedroom house. You know, like it doesn't, the fact that we have to eat an extra half of an ice cream sandwich every once in a while.
Damn.
Or, you know, that like, that I have to work on my computer either up in this front seat or sitting up in bed because you want to sleep. That's irritating to me sometimes. But it's so minor that it's not like a fucking like wedge in the relationship or anything. So, yeah, I don't know. I feel like maybe this is a test for our relationship, but also everything is.
No, it's just a different set of challenges, because I'm sure there are challenges if you're in a 5-bedroom house, you know? I can't even imagine.
Dusting.
That's too much space.
Fuck
I don't
that.
ever want that much space.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just, and we know how to talk to each other and work with each other, so I think we do okay.
Yeah. What else? I feel like I know you too well to dig into you very much.
I don't know. What do the people want to know? What's something you want out of the next one? The next man?
Honestly, it's exactly the stuff that I was complaining about and getting frustrated with you. It's like, I just want a little bit more autonomy, and that tiny little bit of space. And if we have a little blackout curtain if we have a tiny little living space and the bed, and there's a blackout curtain between those two things,
which I would love to make,
right? It allows us to have me time a little bit more than we have right now.
Yeah,
because like right now, or for the last year, my me time has been like surfing. Nobody can bother me when I'm out sitting in the water, or on a walk.
I never get a lot of me time.
Huh?
Because even if
you never get it.
No, because even if I'm at work or either work at the bar or work at the theater, I'm around people.
Yeah.
I don't ever have alone time anymore, which is a challenge because I'm definitely someone who loves my alone time. But if I have to have my not alone time with anybody, I'm glad it's you.
Oh, that's fucking disgusting.
Sorry.
And everybody threw up at the end of the podcast.
Sorry, I had to say one thing nice. But yeah, that would definitely be a big upgrade for both of us.
Yeah.
Just to have that a little bit more breathing room.
Yeah. I always tell people it's not even standing up. that would matter as much to me.
No.
Because we spend so much. Oh, it's going to be great.
It's going to be really great.
It's going to be super great. And then not having to go in and out of bed mode is going to be great.
Yeah.
Like the whole like climb into the bed when you're ready for it, and the other person will be there eventually.
Mm-hmm. I don't like those. I know it works for a lot of people, but the two like couches with the table in the middle, the like diner setup,
yeah,
I want to call it. I don't. It's the same. We would have the same problem that we have now, because I'd want to stay in bed and you would want to work. And if that was the desk area.
Well, a lot of those people have it long enough that there's also another love seat still.
Sure.
But the thing about that for me is that, like, the sexy thing about it is that you can, instead of being able to entertain 4 people or 3 people or whatever, you can entertain 7 or 8 people in the van. But how often do you have that opportunity? How often are there 8 people that want to hang out in the van, and you're in a place where you can make enough noise that there are 8 or you can make as much noise as 8 people in a confined space are going to make. And then,
we could probably get both swivels in the next one.
Maybe so, depending on how close you build the furniture to the thing.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, I'd love to have a long mirror.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I was thinking about that the whole time.
I never know what I look like anymore.
You look terrible. You look terrible.
And I'm like, I
from
try and
use my phone down, you're just looking awful all the time.
I try to use my phone as a mirror, but I can't stand up, so I'm like, I don't know what the fuck my outfit looks like right now, which is annoying.
Yeah, one of the things that I don't think is important enough that I would like to see in the next van, but I think it's too expensive, too difficult, and not needed often enough to make it worth it. But something that I do want sometimes is another seatbelt or 2 in the van, so that, because I do sometimes feel guilty when we're going somewhere with some people, and I would love to be able to pull them along in this giant vehicle that we're driving, especially when we get one that's twice as big.
Could you do it on the love seat? Sideways like that?
I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah,
you have to have a person who's certified in roadway safety restraint stuff. I don't know exactly what it is, but I've read that in order to have a legally viable seatbelt, you have to have somebody who's certified by the state, or at least some government, install it. And so, I don't know. I can't think of any conveyance I've ridden in, other than like one of those weird party buses with a stripper pole in it that they use for bachelorette parties.
Yeah.
I can't think of one of those that I've ridden in that has lateral seats. And so there might, even if the restraint is super sturdy, but in RVs you don't have to wear a seatbelt sometimes. I think I can't think of one of those, or a giant municipal bus. If you get in a head-on collision, what's the problem with this? Like, I don't know if they. You'd have to talk to somebody, and then it's going to cost thousands of dollars, and then every once in a while, Germ's going to want to ride in the van, and we can't let him.
He's going to be the only one.
So maybe, I think it's probably not worth it, but it is something that I would like to have.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, I would like to have that.
Windows will be fun.
Yeah.
That's gonna be cool.
Yeah.
Be able to look outside on a rainy day.
Mm-hmm. Especially when we get more mobile and we're in places with shittier weather.
We can't wait.
All right, what else? I think we did it.
Yeah, we had a really great trip. We did a lot. We did it really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Well, your biggest complaint was it goes too fast.
The van is too fast.
Yeah, which is fair. We didn't have any. At the end, we talked about how we didn't have a lot of downtime, like just where we felt like it was okay to not do anything for half a day or whatever, which was a big lesson, I think.
7.5 weeks is too long for a full-blown vacation unless you're actually relaxing, right?
Yeah, right. And we were not. We were fucking doing it, but we had a great time, and it just made me more and more excited about what the next year, what the next van, what the next thing looks like.
Yeah.
I love this van. I love it, and you've done a gorgeous job, but it will be fun to make a space together.
Yeah.
With all the like things that we've learned and things that we want to accommodate our lifestyle.
Yeah.
And then what will we have to fight about?
Oh, there will be things. Don't worry. You still squeeze.
Is that a threat?
Yeah, you still squeeze the toothpaste tube wrong.
I'm such a jerk. You used to leave your dirty clothes all over the ground.
Ooh. All right.
That's what they came here for.
Yeah.
Couples
Confrontation.
squabbling.
Right. Cool. Well,
Happy anniversary.
happy anniversary. We did it, man.
Yeah,
A whole year in a tiny little space. All right, guys, we did it. Colette and I managed to spend another hour together in the van. Thanks for listening to the episode. I really appreciate it if you made it this far. I hope you enjoyed it. It would really help if you would go over to our YouTube page, our Spotify account, and our iTunes account, like leave some positive reviews or 5 stars and maybe subscribe to some stuff. Really appreciate it if you did that. You can find all of that at FromTheVan.com, and I hope that you'll come back next Tuesday for another episode of From the Van.